Hey, it's James from Marketing for Restaurants, and welcome to episode 30 of Secret Sauce, the restaurant marketing podcast, creating alignment in your business with Chef Adam Sobel.
Some restaurants are quiet, lose money, and the owner works 70 hours a week. Other restaurants are busy, profitable, and the owners work a few hours a day. What's the difference? They have a secret sauce. Join James from Marketing for Restaurants as he helps you come up with your recipe for restaurant success. Your secret sauce.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we've got a really inspiring story, I think, with Chef Adam Sobel from Cinnamon Snail in New York. He has done an amazing job of creating this great alignment between his mission, his vision, the products that he's got, his culture. All of these are really tightly aligned with his passion. And when you can do all of those things, you can create a really, really powerful business, just like Adam's done. And we've got some really interesting little anecdotes that'll come out in this interview. I'm really excited about it. But before we do that, we have a little bit of a restaurant autopsy to discuss today. And this is actually a moderately close one to me because this is the local cafe that I used to go and get my coffee from. A little bit of a creature of habit. On a Saturday, I would like to go out and pick up the paper and go and grab a coffee. Often I'd take one of the kids with me. It'd be a little bit of time that we could have together. The coffee was quite cheap. The staff there were really friendly, and more importantly, it was really good quality. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we were doing our normal weekend thing, and a bit shocked to find that the business had closed. Now, the thing that's interesting about this was that it was a franchise. So we hadn't really spoken too much about marketing because of the fact that being a franchise, there's very little that a franchise owner can do because of the fact that the head office wants to control the marketing for them. I think that this is a bit of a problem. I did a little bit of investigation and it was fairly obvious that the business had been in trouble for a while. It had been on the market for a while. I didn't get the financials from the restaurant broker, but they had published some on their website and I went through and thought, wow, you're really going to struggle with a couple of things in that business model. Firstly, there was the number of hours that they needed to be open. And secondly, just the revenue that they were making, by the time you take into account the lease, was always going to make it really hard for them to be able to run a profitable business. And I had a bit of a look at the kind of marketing that they were doing because, obviously when you've got a revenue problem, that's a marketing problem. You don't have enough customers coming in. And the sad reality was that the marketing that they were doing was the very generic. And so I don't know, it was a Michelle's Patisserie. So kind of a bakery / cafe kind of thing. But there's a couple of really big important messages that comes out of it. First off, it doesn't matter how good you are in comparison to the competition. So I found the staff there to be super friendly. They recognized me as a regular. They kind of knew what I had. The coffee there, and so in Melbourne, we're all kind of coffee snobs. I really quite liked their coffee. It was very good, and it was the best in the local area around where I live by a fair margin. And in fact, the day that I realised that they were closed, I went to the cafe, probably about 5 or 6 doors up from them. More aggressive fit out, a lot nicer fit out. The coffee was a lot more expensive. I would say probably $2 more expensive, maybe a bit more. There was a 15-minute wait and the coffee I thought was poor. I now drive 15 minutes to get a decent coffee, right? So these guys had a much, much better coffee. It was quite a bit cheaper than their competitors and the staff were really friendly. So great product, great value, great experience. They had all three of those things and they're the 3 Gs of restaurant marketing. And yet they still went out of business. And that's because one of the fundamental things that I think that you have a problem when you buy a franchise is that a lot of the marketing that gets done is generic marketing for the business, not specific marketing for your business. And so one of the things I'm going to do is I'm actually going to look into restaurant franchise marketing and see what things there are that you can do as a business owner to be able to better differentiate yourself. Because this is one of the key things that I think that they ran into, was the fact that they weren't specifically being marketed. It wasn't their business with their products in their location. And that's the thing that often gets missed. A lot of franchises, when they do their marketing, they're building the brand of the franchise, because you've got to remember, if you're running a big franchise like that, you've got two kinds of customers. You've got the kind of customers who want to buy your product, and you've got the kind of customers who want to buy your franchise. And so generic branding tends to be one of those things that helps you to sell franchises. It may or may not be targeted directly at driving people into your business. And it's interesting reading the press. There's a court case going on at the moment with one of the pizza franchises. They got into trouble with their marketing, and their response was to offer deals. They were effectively selling pizza at below the cost to produce them. Now, I don't know, how does that work? You tell me, how are you going to make money? How are you going to run a profitable business? If it's a pizza shop, you sell pizza. Yes, there's a few add-ons, but not a lot. If each pizza is going out the door at below cost, that's a recipe for disaster. A recipe for disaster. And so people lost their houses over this. It's really quite a mess that this franchise got into. And this is because of the difficulty, I think, in marketing a franchise, marketing the local businesses. So we're going to look into it. At some stage, I'll produce a podcast on it, because it is one of those things. We don't really focus too much on franchises, because they all think that they kind of know how their marketing is being done. And, they get these big fat fees that is paid by all of the franchise holders. But in general, how well is that being spent? I think that's a really big question, because a franchise, it's the easy way to get into a hospitality business. A lot of the policies and procedures, the hiring, the recipes, some of the accounting things, the fit out, all of that has been taken care for you. But the downside of that is that the marketing is also taking care of it for you, and you're unable to bring in the flair and also the local knowledge that your marketing can bring to the table. So a little bit sad to see a local business go like that. A, it was because, hey, they produced great coffee, but B, that's someone's dream of running a small business that's been dashed and destroyed, and that's really sad. So moving on from that, let's talk about the work that at Cinnamon Snail with Chef Adam Sobel. Now, in the show notes, have a look at it, marketingforrestaurants.com/secret sauce. Go there, have a look at the show notes, because what I'm going to do is include some links to some of the things that Adam's done a really cracking job of. The product that he's got is really quite amazing. It's really exciting. I really like his videos. They are super powerful. And he's also got books as well. So he's attacking the marketing problem on multiple fronts. But the really important ingredients in his secret sauce, I think, is the way that he's got a passion for what it is that he does. And that comes out in the interview and in his videos. That comes out. You can hear that. But he has aligned his passion with the mission of his business, his vision for it, the products that he creates, and the culture that he's building within it. So I think that's all really powerful. And when you can create that alignment, you just get this massive synergy that makes it a lot easier to do the kind of things that you want to do. It makes it easier to hire people. It makes it easier to do your marketing. It makes it easier in general to run your business. So lots of powerful lessons out of this from a really smart restaurant operator. So have a listen. This is Chef Adam Sobel from Cinnamon Snail. Hey, Adam, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So first off, do you want to just tell everyone a little bit about your story, your history, and how you got into the restaurant business?
For sure. So I started working in restaurants around the time I was maybe 17 or 18 years old. I'd fallen in love with this vegan girl who was like the first vegan person I really got to know very well. And she was living on this diet of like French fries and canned soup, and I was determined to learn how to cook really well so I could just make her extra yummy food. So that got me starting to work in restaurants to kind of refine my skill with it. And I worked in restaurants for about a dozen years before the opportunity came up for me to start doing my own thing. I'd been working at one restaurant for about 5 years and was the chef there. And the restaurant changed hands, and the new owners, very quickly ran it into the ground. And, like a lot of people in the restaurant industry, I'd been working off of the books, and I came into work one day, and they were just like, all right, we're closing the restaurant today. Good luck. I started doing a bit of private chefing, and my wife and I ran a stall at our local farmers market, and that's how we scraped up enough money to buy really the absolutely most beat-up food truck on all of Craigslist, and we spruced it up with some friends of ours and launched our food truck in 2010.
Awesome. How did that go?
So it was really pretty well received from the beginning. Certainly it was very slow in the very beginning. We got a lot of very good press because we were the first organic vegan food truck in the United States. But in the very beginning, it was so slow I couldn't really afford to have anyone working on it with me. And I was working pretty much 6 days a week, 18-hour days. I would get up early in the morning and make all of our donuts and then stock the truck and drive it to where we would park, and I'd work on it all day and come back and clean it and prep. And it took a few months before we started being busy enough that I could hire somebody part-time to work the counter on busier days. And then once our truck got permitted to serve Manhattan, it just blew up, where every day we had, a line of over 100 people down the block. And pretty rapidly it evolved into about 50 employees, and we got a couple food trucks, and now we've got a restaurant in Midtown Manhattan and are opening another one up in the financial district this winter.
That's a great story of success then. And so the organic vegan idea, that has just basically been a continuation from your first reason for getting into being a chef?
Yeah, then, myself, I became vegan about a few years after starting to work in restaurants. And I went vegan the day my older daughter was born about 15 years ago. And so, in one day, two of the best, most empowering things that ever happened to me happened. And it's been a really positive thing, to be part of a cooking industry that's, trying to make some impact on the way animals are treated and the way agriculture is thought about, and is maybe a little bit more sensitive to the environment and stuff. So, yeah, it's been a very great direction to go in.
And so your goal is to really introduce people who wouldn't think of eating organic vegan food to try their first organic vegan meal. How has that sort of worked from a marketing point of view for you?
Right. So, I really got into wanting to do this as a food truck concept because there's generally a bit of a stigma, people who have a preconceived notion of what vegan food is about. And, there's a lot of kind of very bland, health foody vegan food. And then there's also on the flip side, a lot of very hyper processed fake meat and fake cheese type of vegan food. But I really wanted to bring extremely bold, flavorful vegan food that was also, nourishing, but not eating vegetables and brown rice type of fare to the street where people would see, this huge line down the block and a beautiful display case of all kinds of pastries that we make fresh every day. And we would just check it out, out of curiosity and not, really because of the fact that it was vegan. And it's been really, really well received. A very large percentage of our customers are not yet fully vegan or vegetarian, but just really love the food. And I like to think that we have, some influence in the mainstream culture's perspective on this type of food and, hopefully have impacted people to at least consume less meat and dairy and gravitate towards a more compassionate lifestyle.
Definitely, definitely. Do you find that having that mission and that vision, does that help you attract the kind of people that you want to work in your business?
To some extent. I think for a long time I was like kind of hell-bent on really only hiring people who were already vegan. And, I kind of learned the hard way that I'd rather hire people who are just exceptional at working in restaurants, whether they're vegan or not. There's definitely like a lot of young, idealistic vegan people who are not necessarily the hardest workers. But we've definitely leveraged like using our social media to reach out to people who already care about our food and love it to attract people who work for us. But yeah, it's definitely, I think anywhere in the restaurant industry, it's always a challenge to attract people who are really motivated and excited to work with the food. And we're constantly growing and replacing people and trying to find a staff who really cares about what they're doing.
I think you've touched on a really good point there. The fact that you are a little bit different, a little bit unique with your mission and vision, using social media to reach out to people who know about your brand, care about it, and then want to work at it. Because too many people just try and want to sell through social media rather than using it for all of the other interesting things that you can do, like hiring, which in a lot of respects is really one of the most important things that you do in any business, because they're the people who are going to be looking after your customers.
Yeah, I mean, I think also like social media is really kind of a open forum you want to have with your customer base. And I think it looks really bad when food businesses are just constantly only trying to promote their food and sell their food and have offers and deals and stuff, and they don't really have like any kind of non-commercial dialogue with their social media following. Like, I think it comes off as feeling really insincere, and for good reason, that it is completely insincere. You're like really only looking at it as an advertising platform when it's really like a very valuable two-way street to hear from your customers about what they're really loving or not loving that you're doing. I'm constantly trying to like bounce ideas off of our customers through social media, and also, kind of tell the story of why it is that we do this. It's really a hustle, and if we were only in this for just making money, I think we would have given up long ago. The restaurant business is very hard to make money at, especially if you're trying to do things ethically and using, responsibly sourced ingredients. Like, the margins are just super thin. And if it wasn't, to me, like a matter of life and death for other living creatures, for the animals who I'm hoping people will decide not to eat, like it's hard to justify being in a business that has so many tight margins. So, we definitely try to like share insight into that in our social media as well, and not just have it be like a straight up advertising program.
Exactly. And you're doing really well on social media. What platforms are you using and how are you using them?
So primarily we deal with, I guess, like the kind of holy trinity of Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Instagram, I kind of had running for like a few years before I really paid any real attention to it. Those pictures of yummy looking food occasionally to it, or things that we were growing in our garden that we were going to use in the food, but never really went too hard with having stuff on it every day and like knowing how to use the appropriate hashtags that make it really more effective as a tool. But yeah, those tools, like, they kind of all have a different audience and a different kind of dialogue that works for it, I guess.
So Twitter, how do you find Twitter marketing works for you?
Twitter, really has, I think, the greatest potential for being a very viral type of platform. Like, it's very easy for somebody to retweet something, way more so than it is for people to regram something on Instagram. And, different from Facebook, which has like a very sort of restrictive algorithm now in place for the like organic reach of content, Twitter really goes out to everybody's followers who's going to be looking at them. So I mean, there's a very great potential for your content to travel really far, right? So I mean, sometimes we use it for all kinds of things, for people knowing where our food truck is, for people knowing about what kind of specials we have going on. But, it's also really handy when, we're in some kind of online poll for maybe best food truck in America. And it's, because we have like a hardcore vegan animal rights following as well as, regular people who just love our food, it's really easy for like the entire world of vegans to go online and vote for us against other non-vegan food trucks because they want to see a vegan food truck be on the top of a list like that. So I mean, it's really helpful for a lot of ways of kind of promoting our business.
And that's one of the things that I think, one of the other things that you've done really well. There's a lot of awards that you've garnered over the years.
Yeah, very fortunate about it. I think very few of them were like easy enough that it was just like, hey, we've got to tell all our customers to vote for us. Like a lot of them, we were like the number one place to eat on Yelp in all of New York City for a year, and like the number 4 place to eat in all of the United States, which was pretty notable. We won this award a number of times that's called the Vendy Award. That's like sort of the Oscars of street food. That was really meaningful to me because that's an event that really brings out people who care about street meat and stuff very passionately. So to have a vegan food truck be that respected in that kind of food culture, like in this, street meat type of food culture, to me, like meant a lot. But yeah, we've been really lucky to constantly be getting some notoriety for the food we do and a lot of press about it.
What do you think's been the success with that? Well, like what sort of strategy do you take towards winning awards like that?
I guess with like food competitions, I just really try to pull out all the stops and bring out my best food and really try to give a varied and accurate insight into like how flavorful and inventive the food can be without being really gimmicky about it. I think a lot of people go to like food competitions and are kind of very like so concerned about how expensive it can be if you're like dishing out 1,000 servings of something. So they give like really small kind of one-dimensional portions of their food, and it doesn't really, show off how exciting and creative their food can be. So I mean, that's worked for us. I mean, I don't know if that works for everybody because it can be really costly to do an event like that, and you may spend like $5,000 on ingredients for a day like that. So I mean, it's certainly not a matter of like whoever spends the most money on it wins, but I think if you're being really cautious about what you invest in participating in some kind of food competition, it generally shows. Like if you're giving away like an eighth of a size portion of a sandwich, there's definitely ways you can do like a slider version of your signature burger and it's still like a good ample portion, and then you can give away something else with it that shows off, like the dessert side of your business or whatever.
Yeah.
Without it feeling like you're just getting like a chopped down little bite of a sandwich or something.
Now, where do you get the inspiration for your menu items? Because they do look amazing. Where do you get the ideas?
I guess it's a really abstract process, but one of the first chefs I worked for, Tom Valenti, had a restaurant called West that I was working on from the time like before it opened until like about half a year after it opened. And one of the sort of like culinary lessons I learned from him that I felt like still remains with my food is the intention to create a menu that really speaks to, the part of someone's appetite and desire for food that's innately there. Like not, like any chef could make some kind of like watermelon octopus salad. And if you're like a great chef, you can pull it off and like, hey, maybe that's not terrible. Maybe you could even make it yummy. But, it's truly like not what somebody wants to consume for dinner. It's like some kind of food gimmick. So I like to be really creative with the food, but creative where it really sounds delicious, where it really like speaks to the side of you that's like, wow, I could really enjoy eating that for dinner. That's like, sounds like an amazing combination of things. Also for me, kind of creating food for an audience that's not necessarily receptive yet to vegan food, I want it to break a lot of the stereotypes people have in their mind about the flavor profiles and the textures. And so I want it to be extremely bold, like just exploding with flavor kind of food that, is like juicier and more tender and more amazing than a non-veg meal might be. So, those kinds of like guidelines, I guess, I keep in mind, but like, as far as like how I come up with pairing some things, like I've got no idea. It really comes down to like at the end of the day, like, wow, does that sound like it's going to be awesome together? Okay, great. Like, let's try it out. And, constantly I'm doing specials as a way to experiment with stuff. And, usually when we change our menu seasonally, I'll bring aboard like a bunch of variations of some of the specials I was really most excited about. It's not always like a matter of what sells the best, and I guess that's where I'm like not the most business savvy person in the world. Like I'll kind of do things just because I think it's going to be the most exciting addition to the menu that feels like it allows our menu to be dynamic and kind of has something for everyone, rather than like only put on like the things that sell the best. To me, like that's a very boring way of running a business.
Definitely, and I think that's one of the really it's a lost art, creating a menu that can speak to as many people as possible.
And that's again, like it circles back to really listening to your customers. And like, there's things I love to have on the menu, but either they like don't really make sense for the workflow of our restaurant, or it kind of like brings the spectrum of our menu overall into like too one-dimensional of a place. Like I'm really heavy on, I love Korean and Vietnamese and Cambodian influences, Taiwanese influences in the food, but like it's not necessarily like the most kid-friendly to somebody who's in Midtown Manhattan with their kid. And like you need to have something that's not spicy and not going to be like too weird for somebody who's never really ventured into Southeast Asian cuisine. So, as much as I love to have like 5 different things on our menu that are all sort of variations or like reinterpretations of traditional Southeast Asian flavors, like I'd rather have some diversity and have like a few really slamming gluten-free options that are like, approachable to somebody who's kind of on like the standard American diet.
It's interesting when you talk about the food that you have on the menu. I feel like I kind of know it, even though I haven't eaten there yet. The thing that really gets that message across is the video that you've got on your website. So how did you get that video produced? Because I think that's a killer video.
Oh, so yeah, I mean, I think there might even be a couple videos on our website, and they're both things that were on TV that ended up on YouTube, and we kind of like embedded into our site. But yeah, I've been fortunate enough to be on a bunch of cooking shows, and I'm working on my own weird kind of road cooking show right now. But from pretty early on in my culinary career, I got involved in teaching at culinary schools, recreational classes on vegan cuisine. And then, as I became more well-known as a chef, I really started being able to have like more refined, like multi-course, fancy wine pairing type cooking classes that I would do. So for me, it's like very natural for me to teach people about vegan cooking, and it's something I'm really excited about and interested in the science and the nutrition angles of it. And it's very rewarding to me to feel like I'm helping people learn how to prepare this type of food for themselves. So that's like led me to be on a bunch of different cooking shows and stuff on the Food Network and that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's where that content came from. One was, I think, an excerpt from a Food Network thing, and the other one is from this show that's kind of like on a local broadcast network that's really well filmed. This woman has this show called Food Curated, and she's like a one-woman team, and I've been on her show, I think, 3 or 4 times, and every time she'll like come out with me and cook on location and shoot a bunch of B-roll, and in like 48 hours she'll have it like all edited and beautiful looking and with like nice sound to it. But like, it's just, it's been a project. She's, invited me to be on her show. So it's not like, somebody who is out for hire that we just hired to create content for our website or something.
That's awesome, because I think the 2 things that those videos do really well is, one, they show the food and it makes you salivate. It makes you think, it makes you hungry just looking at the food cooking. The other thing is that it clearly demonstrates your passion, and, people want to eat where there's, someone showing a bit of passion in the food preparation, I think, and those 2 sort of things come across so well.
I think it's like a little bit of an art to like learn how to be interviewed properly, to really like express what you want to highlight and share about your food business, right? Like, I think a lot of people are very nervous about it at first if they're not used to being interviews for TV or radio or even for like print publications and stuff. And it's, you kind of have to have this rule of thumb in your mind, like, all right, whatever is like the stupidest, most awkward thing you're going to say, like, most likely that's going to end up being selected as like the one, 3-second long thing that ends up in the video or something. So you have to be really careful about what you say, and you want to like articulate what you do in a way that's really appetizing and exciting, and hope that the message you want to get conveyed is really what comes across. I think like the first time I did something for the Food Network, I was really kind of like, I think it was within my first year of running the food truck, and I was really kind of nervous about it. And I was talking about, at that time we had like a granola that we served with our, like on our breakfast menu. And it's probably like the least interesting, exciting menu item. And I think I said something like, and we make our own granola. And that was like the one sound bite they took. And I remember being like so disappointed how lame it sounded, like how typical of like a vegan business. It was like, oh, we make granola ourselves from scratch. And so ever since then, I've been like more careful to really articulate the things that are exciting and, and really appetizing about our cuisine.
That's awesome. So you've also got a cookbook. What was the process that you came up with to actually get a cookbook published? How was that done?
Right. I actually grew up in a literary agency. My parents are both literary agents and worked from home and have like a small office out of their home. So growing up, there were like constantly people recipe testing and shooting photos for their cookbook in our home. And it was kind of something I grew up around a lot. And very coincidentally, like people had been asking me to do a cookbook for years, and I never really felt ready or established enough in, like my knowledge of cooking. And, I'm not a culinary school graduate. I really learned from working in restaurants. And I still sort of feel like I'm not like a real chef. Like there's still chefs I really, really look up to and kind of feel like, all right, I'm doing my best to make really excellent food, but like there's so much I don't know and there's so much I still have to learn. But we started very coincidentally parking our food truck in front of a giant office building that happened to be the Midtown offices of Penguin Random House, who the publisher who ended up bidding on our cookbook was within the Clarkson Potter. And when I put together a proposal for my cookbook and had my agent send it out, like there were a bunch of publishing houses in New York that already had, like huge fan bases of my food working in their office. and especially this one at Clark's and Potter, like, the whole bunch of people at this publisher would come eat from my truck every week, and we're already like, very well aware that our truck attracted a line of people, like 80 or 100 people long every day, and knew there was like a viable market for my book. So there were a few publishers who bid it out, and I ended up selecting Clark's and Potter, not because they were the highest bidder. There was actually another publisher who bid like maybe $5,000 or $6,000 more for the book, but I was really confident that Clark's and Potter would make the book look beautiful, and they really did. They were great to work with as far as like the artistic direction of the book. Like, to me, for me, like when looking at a cookbook, I really love to get lost in the food photography and in the like stylization of the recipes and presentation of it. And they were really willing to like let me have a ton of color photographs in the book. And, also like for me, the angle of my cookbook was not just recipes, but also sort of like telling the story of what it's like to run a food truck in New York City and how I got into making vegan food. So there's a lot of stories kind of speckled throughout the book, which I think makes it really like a fun and engaging book for our customers, even the ones who like got our book and don't necessarily cook from it a whole lot. Like, 'cause truthfully, like the food we make is a little bit, it's not like for the home cook. It's pretty component based. So like making an entree or a sandwich out of our cookbook might mean like making 5 or 6 different sub recipes, which, is really not realistic for a lot of people who need to throw dinner together at home. But the stories really end up making it a very valuable book to like even people who are not going to regularly be cooking out of the book all the time.
Sure. Yeah, that's excellent. And it's been successful, has it?
Yeah, about, I guess, like 6 or 8 months after its release in the U.S., somebody bought the rights to have it published in Germany, where it's been like translated. And yeah, I think it's done pretty well. Like, I don't know exactly how many copies it sold. Like, I don't think it's like a best-selling cookbook, but it's sold well enough that I know we won't have trouble selling another cookbook when I'm ready to do that. And I'm really hoping this winter I can start working on my proposal for that, because I have a really cool sort of niche angle for the next cookbook I want to work on that I think will be exciting to a lot of cooks.
That's awesome. And I think the interesting thing about it is that you get this nice little feedback loop where people who buy your cookbook want to come and eat the food, and then people who eat the food want to buy your cookbook. And so
For sure, yeah. I mean, I guess from like a marketing perspective, like, we're a food business that serves tourists a lot. Like, we've been blessed to be in like all kinds of airline magazines and lots of like foreign guidebooks to New York City, like the best food trucks or the best vegetarian or vegan cuisine. So daily we're serving people from outside the New York area who seek us out, both domestically and internationally. So it's kind of just one more way that somebody could pick that up at a Barnes & Noble, like anywhere on the planet, and find out about our food and be like, hey, this sounds like really cool. Next time I'm in New York, I'll check it out. So it's, that's a nice, like, sort of subtle benefit of it as well.
Absolutely. Well, we can probably wrap it up about there. I think you've shared lots of great stories, and it just really sort of comes back to having that vision, having that unique selling proposition, adding that with the passion that you've got, and it just makes everything so much more successful. And it's, I just think you're doing a really good job. And of course, it's all based on the food. It'd be a real struggle if your food wasn't any good, but it just looks amazing. The reviews that people write about it just looks amazing. So obviously you've been able to marry up a great unique selling proposition with some innovative marketing techniques to be really crushing it. Yeah. That's really exciting. So,
yeah, well, thanks. It's it's a hustle, but it's
yeah, well, thanks for sharing all of that information with us, Adam.
For sure. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been a real pleasure to listen to your podcast, and it's really a treat to be able to contribute to it.
Thank you. Wow, there you go. So Adam, really smart guy running an awesome business. I can't wait to go to New York to try out some of that food. If you do nothing else, just check out the video, because if your business had a couple of videos like Adam's got for his, I'm telling you, you'd be doing a whole lot better than you are now. Those videos are completely killer at getting across that message about what his restaurant is about, and it makes you want to go there. So, look, that's it. I hope you've got something out of it. I'm sure you have. There was Adam's got lots of pearls of wisdom that he shared with us in this interview, and I will talk to you in the next podcast. And apart from that, I hope you have a busy day. Bye.
Want more customers for your restaurant, cafe or takeout? Every month, our marketing tools and information are used by thousands of restaurant owners just like you to help them find more customers and turn them into repeat customers. All of our tools and information is designed specifically for restaurant owners. We know you don't have a lot of time to spend marketing or learning complicated procedures, so our tools are quick and easy to use. If you're looking to increase your revenue and profits or want to work less hours, check out marketingforrestaurants.com.